we're still alive. That's the main thing. You know, we like joy and upliftment when we do a service. What I'm going to do at this time, I'm going to do a short reading, and Al was going to follow with the lecture. And the reading the Spirit has chosen for him, he actually wrote it directly from Spirit. It's called Forgiveness. Forgiveness is something that is embedded in our spiritual belief. Yet, for many people, it is extremely hard to achieve. The world is going through many changes which are natural occurrences, and yet we must take some of the responsibility for adding to the situation through our neglect of our planet. This gift of life makes us custodians of the earth, with the responsibility to nurture and care for our environment. We are living in a time when man's spiritual vision has become blurred, and his need to succeed at any cost is overcoming his reason. To resist this means for us to abstain from our natural ability not to interfere or get involved. Situations have arisen where for us to resist means weakness, and to give in to those who would seek power over others. This is often to avoid worsening the conflict, which may make the ordeal much worse and the effect much more detrimental. The vision of weakness can often lead to revenge, which is a tit-for-tat reaction, making the situation more difficult to resolve. It is also a very negative energy which makes no place for compromise. In this case, it puts our beautiful planet in grave danger, with leaders of countries using unnatural powers to obliterate the enemy. The real enemy in this situation that we find ourselves in through man's lack of spiritual understanding. The saying that war does not define who is right, only who is left, makes man's understanding of war unbelievable. Remorse is a bitter repentance, which mankind realizes the pain and suffering he has inflicted on his fellow brothers and sisters in this world. The word sorry just doesn't seem to cover the affliction and damage done to those who are suffering through insidious actions and demands. So the world ends with a no-compromise situation where negativity breeds hatred. So where does forgiveness come into the equation? At times it seems an impossibility and the most difficult thing to do. But it is also the most rewarding when eventually achieved. Let us look to our wonderful earth and ask Spirit to guide us into a world of everlasting peace. And here's Al. There you go.
Well, it was good morning from him, and it's a good morning from me too. I sat down and I thought about this before I actually put it together, and I thought how difficult it is to actually forgive. And we all go through that because we're human. We chose to come into this physical body, and it brought all of the attributes and the disappointments and everything that goes with it. And I often look at that word, and you know, we all make mistakes. None of us is perfect. Well, pretty close, but not. No, I'm joking. None of us is perfect. And we all, you know, we fall out with people, we argue with people, and then we get that little tinge inside that says, I shouldn't have done that. But do we often go up and say to that person that we've hurt maybe, I'm sorry? Because it's difficult, isn't it? You know, we all think that we're right in everything that we do. But when we do pluck up that courage to say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, that is the wonderful feeling, because you have been the first one to reach out to that person and say, I'm sorry, forgive me, it shouldn't have happened. You see, I believe in reading an awful lot. And one of my favourites is Andrew Jackson Davis, who was born in 1828. in Blooming Grove, Orange County in New York State. One of 6 children. His father was delighted when he was coming along, but his mother thought 6, that's a bit too much, you know, but she did grow to love him. His father was a weaver and a shoe repairer. And as Andrew grew up, he didn't care for him at all. He thought he was long and skinny and lanky and not very nice looking. But one day, Andrew came to him and said, look, why don't we move? We're not doing very well here. We should move to a place, and I hope I'm going to pronounce this right, called Poughkeepsie. Is that right? Oh, I got it wrong. There we go. I got it right, I should say. And from then on, things started to develop from him. And he was introduced to a mesmerist, who then took him forward, and then other ones who helped him to develop the altered state of consciousness, or we often call it trance. And he eventually became able to induce himself, over a few years of course, into the trance-like state. And he brought some wonderful teachings back from the spirit world. I always think of Andrew Jackson Davis as being really the father of the spiritualist movement, but that's me. I feel that way, and of course there were many others, and he was able to bring them through in that altered state of consciousness. Emanuel Swedenborg, and he also had so many different teachers that would come through him, and he wrote many, many wonderful books. And I learn a lot from reading from Andrew Jackson Davis. I make no excuses for it, because a very dear friend of ours called Al Batten, and some of you might know him, Albert Batten from Canada, has written a beautiful book, and he talks about spiritualism. He was a 4th generation spiritualist, born into spiritualism. Wonderful speaker and a wonderful guy. And I've thought many, many times that we may go on several different pathways in spiritualism. And each one of us feels that we've found the right pathway for us. And that is the most important thing. We've had people come and say, no, you shouldn't work the way you work with spirit. It doesn't work that way for me. Hang on a moment, it works that way for me. I don't want anybody telling me what spirit tells me to do. Because I feel that when we work with spirit, we don't call them, we don't demand spirit. You cannot demand from spirit. You can ask for guidance, that the minute you start demanding, it'll go. So we tend to sit quietly. People will often say to us over here, oh, why do you need to sit quietly before you go on? Because that for us is tuning into spirit. Now, Geoff doesn't know. Lots of people will say, oh, I tune into my guide. I know my guide's name. Geoff has not got a clue who his guide is. And you know what? They always say from spirit, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we do make that contact with you. It doesn't matter the name. I mean, my guide, I only found out about my guide because we had a psychic art class at our church in England. And this young lady, she drew a little picture of an Indian. And she said, I'm with you. I was, oh, lovely. And I looked at this picture. It's very nice. This is a small one. And then about a week later, we went to lunch with some friends. And Maggie is a wonderful artist. She paints in oils. And standing on an easel was this beautiful painting of an Indian. And it was identical to the one that the young girl, or the young lady, had given to me. And Maggie said, I don't know who this belongs to. I was just inspired to paint it. So I went out to the car, brought this little picture in, and she looked at it. She said, oh, it's for you. So I know the name of my guide, Owa Atuka Kuta Omawa. Now that's a mouthful, isn't it? There is a simple way of word for him, but I've forgotten the one. I can only remember the long one. Which is a bit crazy at my age of 39, isn't it? You don't believe me. You know, our chair lady, when she said we've been in Spiritualism for 60 years, that's a lot, isn't it? And so when you're only 39, 60 years seems a long, long way away. No, we're 38 actually. If you turn it around, you might be right. But you know, spiritualism for us is a wonderful, wonderful way of life. I prefer to look at it as a way of life, rather, and I don't mean this badly, rather than a religion. Because it's how you live your life. And that's not easy because, as I said before, we all make mistakes. That's why we chose to come to this earth plane, to make those mistakes so that we can learn from them. And if you're anything like us, we make them over and over and over again until we actually get the message. And we learn from it, and then we move on, and maybe another mistake will come up. But you know, the greatest thing I've found in making these mistakes, especially if it hurts or offends someone else, is to have the ability to say, I shouldn't have done that, and I apologize. Can you find it within your heart to forgive me? And you know what? When you unload that, you feel so much better. You feel the relief of having said that and being truthful, because this is what spiritualism is about, searching for the truth. Now, it's searching for your truth. Your truth may not be my truth, but it doesn't matter. What we're looking for is what feels right and correct for us, what sits right with us. And so we keep searching, because, you know, we can't sit down and say, oh, today I found the truth, so I'm a spiritualist now. We never stop learning, and we never stop searching for that reality, that truth. Oh, the minute we give up, well then, we've lost the plot. I'm always searching, always reading, always looking for my truth, what feels right for me. And if it feels right for you, that's wonderful too. You found your truth. It doesn't mean we stop looking. It doesn't mean we stop searching. And there are so many different ways that we can find our truth. You know, we don't have to be a goody-goody in this life. It's never going to fit us. I can tell you.
Speak for
They
yourself.
know, don't you? But what we try to do is to do the best that we can. That's all that divine essence that we call God asks of us, that we do the very best that we can. That I get out of bed every morning and I think, oh, I'm still alive. I've got another day. That's wonderful. But you know, we never go to Spirit until the right time. We're going to a remembrance service when we've left here. There was a lovely lady at Michael's church, the Kissimmee church, who lost their daughter at 49 years old. And they're just devastated. But you know, the wonderful thing about spiritualism is that we know that the passing of the physical body is not the end. It's merely the beginning of a next phase of our life. Whether you want to call it the etheric world, the spirit world, Andrew Jackson Davis came back with messages so vivid and said there were 7 phases of consciousness, and that we're living in the lowest one now, the first one. And so this is where we come to make all the mistakes, to do the trials of our life. And then when we take that step, he says that what we've done, we've just finished our task on the earth plane. And I think that's a nice way of looking at it. We completed the task, and now it's time to move to the next task. And we're not going to change. It's going to be exactly the same. We'll be just as troublesome, I'm sure, you know. But then we have that opportunity to learn and to grow in a much finer consciousness than we are here on the earth plane. And we'll have those teachers in the spirit world who will be there to help us. But it's up to us. How are we going to live our lives here? That's what we're challenged with now. Because we are preparing for the soul's progression to the next phase of life. The real you and I. And are we going to just say, oh, I couldn't care less. I'm going to live my life. I don't care what goes wrong. Well, then when we get to that next phase of life, we will be disappointed maybe with where we have arrived. But then Spirit will say to us, well, this is what you earned. And it's true. So all they ask us to do is to do our best, to make an effort, to reach out to those who are less fortunate than ourselves. It's not difficult, friends. It takes just a little effort. You know, I always remember a friend of ours helping a little old lady across the road. And he said, that's my good deed for the day. And it's true. That little old lady was so grateful. And it is. It's only doing something small, smiling at someone, a little person that's sitting behind their window. They might never see anybody all week. And you pass and you give them a smile. That's a gift to be able to give. You know, it costs you nothing, but it may have a wonderful result on the person who's receiving it. So when we next get into an argument, which might be on the way back in the car, we never know, but he tells me how to drive and I tell him how to drive. So there's quite a possibility there. We must learn now how to say, I forgive. Forgiveness is so wonderful. And if we all remember that little word, to forgive, we will cleanse ourselves of that little mishap or silly word that we spoke at that time, and we'll feel that we can go forward. It might be until the next mistake we make, who knows? But at least if we take it a step at a time, we're helping ourselves, we're helping our soul to move to that next phase of life when the time is right. And we get there and say, look at the level I have reached, and be happy with it. I hope we all hope for that. We do, don't we? We all want to be at that level, which is going to be a place of happiness and joy. No one else can help us. It's up to us. We have that free will, a personal responsibility. So I'll leave you with those few words and hope it's made a little bit of sense. I always ask my guide to just try to influence me because I never know what I'm going to say before I stand up. They never let you down. Thank you very much for listening.